You all, and I just learned about 10 tips when Ralph gave his tips. So, do you ever feel like you're about to give a presentation and somebody saw your presentation before and they gave it just before? So, no, I'm not gonna be repetitive, but I hope I'll bring some new perspectives to what Ralph's already kind of highlighted. I think one of the things that's interesting, and I as I put this together, I thought about video changing communications forever. One of the things that I find myself doing in video, Rao, that you mentioned, was that a lot of times you're so conscious about everybody else here, you forget about the room that you're in. So it's this balance between staying here with the people in the room and talking, and still addressing the audience, right? So I threw down some thoughts here that will hopefully help in the way that I thought about this. And one of it's about the technology itself. The other one is about a little bit about process in terms of how to use it, and the other one is very much cultural in terms of how people and we need to embrace the technology. So hopefully it'll resonate with you. I'm calling this the kind of the 3 ingredients for success, right? And you'll remember from last time that I'll tie in my previous speech that I talked about where I had the 10 tips, Darren's top 10. We'll talk about that under the culture piece. So let's dive into the technology first, and obviously I think it's great that the Toastmasters group is testing out new technology like telepresence to do these types of sessions. But obviously at Cisco, we know and love that the technology is here, right? And we've actually, demonstrating not only in telepresence, but we have so many video-enabled devices to use, right, at Cisco, which we kind of take for granted, right? So we obviously have telepresence, we have Tandberg coming to a theater near us, right? So I was just with Edzard today and getting him set up on a home telepresence, or excuse me, Tandberg unit. And those are going to be deployed, almost 5,000 of them globally in the next coming year. So you'll see a lot more of Tandberg out there. And then the one that we probably use most often is WebEx, right? And the video capabilities there. So the thing that I want to call out here is that there's no shortage of capability, right? And in fact, at Cisco, I think we are part of the video generation. We're going to look back at this time and say, I was kind of there when it all started, right? So the technology's here. We have no excuses with it. We have to learn how to embrace it. And I think, Rao, you hit on a bunch of things that we should publish externally to the rest of Cisco around just TP, right? Because there's some behavior and etiquette that you need to understand there, how to use it. The other dynamic that I think is very real to the generation now is just the use of video in communications, where it's more from a social network and media perspective, right? And obviously the flips have kind of changed the game with that in terms of how easy they are to use, and then how easy it is to share video, right? Which is pretty innovative. The next piece I want to kind of talk about is process, and sometimes process is an ugly word, but I think we all need to think about this from a standpoint as we're conducting meetings. Maybe it's internal meetings we're having, maybe it's customer meetings or others where we're going to leverage technology like this, and to think about what types of meetings you're going to do with what, right? And I got to tell you, I've seen so many meetings that are conducted on WebEx, and nobody ever uses a camera, right? Everybody has the camera, but they don't use it. So we're kind of not leveraging the full capability of the technology, right? And I think it's something that we need to think about as well. The other piece is around aligning the type of meeting you're having to the technology. A lot of times we get excited about telepresence, like, well, hey, we want to have the meeting in telepresence, but do we really need to leverage telepresence for the type of meeting we're having, right? So obviously meetings, one-on-ones, basic communication type stuff doesn't need to be done on telepresence. This technology really should be used for important customer-facing meetings, meetings that would eliminate travel, these types of things that are more strategic in nature. But the one thing that I wanted to just mention in meetings like this, right, and we see this in all forms of communication, is where people tune out, right? They're multitasking, we have a multitasking culture, and I think that's one of the process things that we have to really, really watch around making sure that people are there in the meeting with us, right? And I think too often at Cisco we get distracted by a lot of things going on and we don't get the full benefit of the meeting. The other part that I want to mention on process is the integrated workforce experience, which will, and many of us have already seen this. I know the sales teams are already experiencing this with the global platform for sales, where, again, we're trying to integrate that experience of not only video and communication platforms, but also the content and the other types of things that we want to, again, personalize for the user, right? So we're doing this by functional organization, but this is an area to watch because that's going to become more and more integrated with the video experience over time, right? The last piece, which is probably the most fun and where we can all play the biggest role, is the culture piece or the people piece, right? And really leading by example and getting comfortable with the technology. And my team will resonate with this one. I set a policy about a year ago where we started to have all this technology. We just said, listen, we're not going to have a meeting. I refuse to have a meeting if somebody's remote and we don't use video, right? So if you don't have video, I'll buy the camera, we'll get it set up, but every meeting needs to be conducted that way, right? And there was a reason for it, right? And part of it was getting comfortable with using the technology, but I'll tell you, I manage a team that's, we've got people in Hong Kong, we have people in Tokyo and Sydney. It's changed just the regular experience with them, right? You feel much closer, and it can really help drive a lot of good behaviors. So I would just encourage everybody in remote working to just leverage that. If somebody doesn't have their camera on, ask them why, right? Tell them next time we got to have video. Now, the only caveat that I would say to that is that you got to be mindful of really early in the morning, depending on times at night. So you can have some wiggle room there, but we do have to drive the strategy, right? And it's very much a Cisco on Cisco story and strategy that we're trying to drive. The last piece is remember my top 10, and then remember all of your learnings at Toastmasters. I mean, speaking in this format is really no different, right? It's doing all of the other things that you've already learned along the way. This is just a medium, right? It's a different medium to speak through. The last piece that I'll leave you with here, and again, this is a slide that I'll just let it build out here, but it just kind of shows the different technologies and the types of communications and maybe a mapping to how you can think about what technology you should use for different types of communications and some of the offerings. Some I didn't even mention previously. But our whole strategy, right, as a company to drive, again, productivity, to drive performance with our customers, etc., is built around video, right? And video also drives bandwidth on networks, and it is the killer app for Cisco, right? So I think wherever we can demonstrate how we use it to increase productivity, to cut across geographic boundaries, and to get things done faster, we want to demonstrate that. So I hope what I shared with you today you can use practically, and also take that culture piece on board with driving it with your peers and your colleagues. So back to you, Srini.
Really, the 3 ingredients of success. Definitely agree. We have to go with technology, process, and culture, because today, even with the technology, we have to follow the process with the culture. Then only you will get the success, because the RAW is putting so much plan with all this layout and sitting, and only with the technology you have to do the process to make it as a successful event. Thanks again. Thanks for your tips.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the next segment. Is the prepared speeches.